Everything is corrupt in China, and every industry is a Tofu Dreg industry. Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign finds its way into medical corruption. Welcome to China Insider. Now, today I want to introduce you to why everything in China is corrupt and why it is actually a Tofu Dreg situation everywhere you go. Now, in particular, through the lens of three big industries with ongoing corruption scandals, I'll tell you why my case may be. Now, each of them has its own version of Tofu Dreg, which is poor, life-threatening situations and qualities. First, let's talk about China's Red Cross. Every time there is a natural disaster, CRC China Red Cross becomes a meme among people. They're not known for rescue after a disaster, but for corruption. Now, this is also a big reason why China's disaster relief is so bad. It's a Tofu Dreg because there's no real disaster relief in China. That system is a facade. Now, a recent Chinese media article shows that the expenditure data of the Red Cross Society of China in 2023. Now, in the column of salary and welfare expenditure, it includes 10 items such as basic salary, allowance subsidies, bonuses, and food costs. The total expenditure is 26.12 million yuan. That's about 3.6 million US dollars. The article also specifically mentions that the Red Cross Society of China has 60 public officials with an average of 435,000 yuan per person in pay, or 60,000 US dollars. Now, 60K is a pretty decent salary in the United States. I mean, that's more than what many teachers make, but 435,000 yuan a year is considered really good for especially a charity organization. Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement, of course, is a global organization like the American Red Cross. But China Red Cross does not follow the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, because China's Red Cross is in fact a part of the State Council, aka the government. So unlike the other Red Cross societies around the world, it is in fact China's most powerful and oldest government-organized non-governmental organization. So its birth is directly tied to Communist China's government. But the persisting corruption and embezzlement of the donation fund, especially during disasters, make people very angry. China's Red Cross has become infamous, a public enemy to never donate to. Imagine you're waiting for flood relief or earthquake relief, and the Red Cross never comes. And this would be China in every single case since at least 2008. Now, according to China's state-run media, over 12.4 billion US dollars in goods and services were donated to earthquake victims in the year after the 2008 Sichuan Wenchuan earthquake. And if you haven't seen the video where I specifically talk about the Tofu Dreg situation of the impact of that Wenchuan 2008 earthquake in Sichuan, well, check out this video. However, the charity's reputation was soon tarnished because some that were monitoring the earthquake rebuilding efforts accused Red Cross officials of essentially misusing donations by purchasing needlessly expensive tents and vehicles. Of course, they denied these allegations. Just a year after that, in 2009, researchers at Tsinghua University revealed that 80% of the charitable donations after 2008's Sichuan earthquake were funneled into the Chinese government as extra revenue. In April of 2011, revelations of an extravagant banquet attended by Red Cross officials costing almost 10,000 yuan, which is about $1,600, spurred criticisms online. Now, of course, the amount isn't that high in the US dollars, but 10,000 yuan is still considered pretty high, especially back then. And that's for employees of a charity. Again, in 2011, a woman was flaunting her wealth wearing Red Cross swags. And later on, they found that she was actually having a lot of ties with a member of the Red Cross board. And that led to the organization being synonymous with corruption. Now, fast forward to the latest floods in northern China, Red Cross China's lack of rescue funds again calls into question what the organization really does. Someone recently posted online that he purchased his own donations to Red Cross during the 2020 pandemic, and he bought his own stuff. I don't know how that happens, but he was pretty shocked when he opened the package. Now, the Beijing Red Cross recently called on people to donate money for that flood relief. But in the detailed list of goods donated, the price of goods donated were more expensive than retail prices of that same type of item. And so it makes you wonder if they were really just taking the difference for their own. But the legal representative of the company that donated the clothes and the person, the executive director of the Red Cross in Beijing, they're actually the same person. So then now you're wondering, are they just self-donating? Isn't that just money laundering? Well, many in fact left comments about the girl flaunting her wealth in 2011 this year during the latest campaign to raise more money. And it seems people never forgot about the group's corruption. Not only that, all of those listed items that were donated, they included suit jackets and suit pants, dress pants, and they were in large quantities. So that's very unusual for a disaster relief to get that type of material or for clothing, especially because they also had down jackets, but it's the summer months, so they're not that useful. It makes you wonder why they're spending the extra amount of money to acquire clothes that are not suitable. Now, also in the latest flood, workers from Red Cross China had clean shoes, clean pants, and it seems to be a clearly staged flood rescue effort, a photo op. And that also prompted many Chinese internet users to protest the organization by making a 1-cent donation only. Of course, Red Cross Beijing was really mad, and they raised the minimum for how much you can donate to just 1 yuan because they didn't want to get harassed and trolled. And also Red Cross China, they actually do have a lot of money. It's not like they really need the donation because, they have the government. But they just never spend it on the Chinese people themselves. In fact, they recently donated a large amount of supplies to Sudan. And also during COVID, they also donated a lot of medical supplies to places in Europe and Africa. And now a viral video will tell you exactly what happened during COVID. This is a video of a government vehicle picking up boxes of high-quality face masks from China's Red Cross warehouse in Wuhan. And that same warehouse had turned away medical workers who were fighting in the hospitals back then. Now, while we're talking about medical workers, this is where we have to talk about the second industry that's very corrupt, and things get really bad. The Tofu Dreg is not as clear as you can see, because here, the Tofu Dreg is that if you don't pay enough to the doctors, they might not save your patient. That's pretty corrupt, right? Now, you might not understand what I mean, so I'll give you an example. In China, even when I was very young, I knew about this. You have to give the doctor who's treating either, that's your grandparents or father and mother or kids, these things called red envelopes. You might have seen them, you get them during Chinese New Year. And they're filled with 100 yuan bills. And the idea is that since everybody gives the doctor money nowadays so that they can treat, do the surgery, the more money you give, it's like an insurance that the doctor doesn't mess it up with the person, right? Especially if the surgery is something like, like an open heart surgery or some sort of an invasive surgery. You want to make sure that the doctor has enough money so that your person does not get killed in the process. Isn't that crazy? And if you don't do it enough, there's no guarantee that, something could go wrong during the process. In fact, now, the Chinese Communist Party is launching an investigation, an anti-corruption campaign against the entire medical industry. They're trying to search and claw back 20 years of wrongdoings. And they're calling this a quota-based anti-corruption. Now, what does that mean? Basically, say the central government decided that, this province, you have to find $100 million in funds that were due to graft and corruption. So it doesn't matter how many doctors you have to investigate or how many hospital directors you have to talk to, you've got to submit that $100 million at the end of the investigation. Actually, it may not be that hard, considering the Chinese hospital system, like I said, it's really corrupt. And so this year, it was reported that an investigation into a Chinese hospital that imported what's called a linear accelerator, or LINAC, for about 35 million yuan, or $4.8 million US, the hospital director got half of that as kickback, so $2.4 million US. The linear accelerator is a radiotherapy equipment in the hospital. Of course, doctors are also involved in corruption as well, from taking, like I said, the red envelope as a bribe for surgery to blatant overcharges. Now, Chinese doctors on average make about 90,000 yuan a year. That's 13K US dollars. So that's like 10 times less than what American doctors would make. Of course, though, the average doesn't show the big discrepancy between the cities and rural areas, but even then, places like Shanghai, doctors make up to 350,000 or 50,000 US dollars. Now, the problem is salary doesn't determine how much money they take home in the final income, because a bigger portion of that is under the table. They call it gray zone income. So getting kickbacks, embezzlements, funds, outpatient care, etc. 80 to 90% of that, they're considered gray zone income. I mean, obviously, if you're not paying the doctors enough, they will find ways to make money somehow under the table. Now, our third industry is the higher education, the university system, corruption in that. Now, the Tofu Dreg of education in China is that all they're really doing is producing test-taking robots and people who just regurgitate verbal and memory-based knowledge rather than innovation. Now, this is worrying for the future of China, but we're already seeing the effects now. What I'm mainly referring to is China's inability to produce research and, of course, innovation. Now, Chinese universities, they waste millions of dollars without actually making real use of the funds to research. There's really two problems here. Having the money and not allocating it to where it should be, but even as there is money, the second issue is that research isn't really taking place. Here's why. It's very simple, actually. The government of China and the CCP, they oversee everything, right? Innovation is the only measured way to see how much this country allows you to think. And what's allowed under the CCP is that nothing can be done without the government's sanction first. So there's no room for individual attempts to innovate because the state rewards planning and control. Innovation in itself, of course, it's an idea of freedom, right? Freedom to think. We know very much about it because we live in a free country, but that idea itself is suppressed in China. Now, with the research funds, it's corruption. So I'll give you an example. When the United States restricted chip exports to China, the CCP launched what is called a super semiconductor fund. And so they're trying to start the semiconductor chip boom in China. Many industrial companies switched to making chips. The government incentivized that by, granting them money to start the process. Even some meat producers abandoned their industry to switch to making chips. Now, did this move and, did it actually effectively boost China's high-tech innovation? It didn't. It just ended up with a bunch of companies getting money. Chinese universities and their research is pretty much the same. It's quantity over quality. It's short term over the long term. The transaction is not built on exploring ideas of science. It's a way to make some money through a research project. I mean, think about it. How can you have high quality researchers and thinkers? Because what you're all doing is just putting it into a mold of communism and try to mass produce a number of robots that are great at test taking, high scores, but somehow fails in graduate studies to really innovate. And that's why I say that there's tofu dreg everywhere in China. There's hidden dangers. You never know where one part could become the failure in this entire structure. Do you believe me now? Let me know in the comments. All right, this is our topic today on China's Everything is Corrupt. And if you enjoy the content, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, as well as share this video with all the friends that you think would enjoy it. All right, I'm David Zhang. We'll see you next time.